welcome. This is Chipicon. Welcome to Otherworldly. And tonight, our guest is Christopher Croucher, who I've known him for a little while, and I bumped into him a couple of weeks ago at the EarthSpirit Gathering Feast of Lights, where I went to a workshop where he was exploring luck and how we can get a little bit more of it. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And actually, it's a quite simple and easy. And I don't know if you're going to be trying to do another one here. I have explored the breakout room technology in case
he opened the menu and looked at it.
but other than that, we are going to. Okay, what shall we say about Chris? Cool thing is he's an artist. And he's a performer, and he's a healer, and he's a witch, and he's another one of those pagans who chooses not to just do one thing, which I think is wonderful. Not being able to pick one thing to do myself. that is something that I understand. Because besides which, they all work together. And I'm probably going to try and get him to come back again, because I want to talk about art and magic, but not tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about the luck, because having not thought about it before, I said, "Oh, would you come and talk about that?" And he said yes. So let's put him on the spot. And so Chris, which shall I?
Chris is good. I tend to do everything in writing as Christopher, just so it looks more professional. But yeah, as soon as we get talking, I'm just Chris.
Oh my goodness! And I see the bins in your background. So I go, there's an artist, all right.
Oh yeah, yep. That's why I don't use the background when I do Zoom. Whenever I have clients or do talks or performances that are filmed to be online, I always leave this open, because I'm like, this is the honest truth right here. It's all fabric and all the things. So yes, welcome to my office, my ritual room, all of that.
So do you want to just go straight into the luck? And if we have any time at the end, we can diverge. But I'm going to tell a little story, because it's hard to shut me up, especially when it's my show. I can still remember being about 3, and that's when I decided that I believed in magic, or discovered magic, because things would happen. Like, I would be sitting in the kitchen and say, "I'd really like a Lorna Doone," and my mother would walk into the kitchen and say, "Hey, would you like a Lorna Doone?" Or things that I wanted that were very, very specific would suddenly happen to me. And I said, okay, there's something going on with that. And so when people started saying, "Oh, no, magic is make-believe," I was like, I think your information is wrong. So anyway, so when it comes to luck, I think I have a lot of it. And I have known people who I believe are hexed. I believe their luck is broken or reversed or blocked or something. So that's not a fun thing for them.
It's interesting that you talk about it that way, because just to give a little bit of background to the luck circle itself. So this is not my concept. This is something that I learned from an art fellowship retreat that I was on as part of a grant program back this last summer. And I'll talk more about the specifics with that. But because it was in an art space, of course, there were a lot of spiritual people, but it wasn't specific to magical practice or anything along those lines. And of course, as soon as I experienced it, it was like, oh man, this is a great way to do a ritual and to add things in and to really open to the magical energy that we tend to work with anyway. So Chipicon, I love the way that you bring up specifically that that desire and seeing something come to fruition just based on that energetic connection, that magical connection. Because I think we all probably have similar stories, magical practitioners, and I definitely relate to that. And then the luck, I don't consider myself a particularly lucky person, although if I go through and think about instances, I've had a lot of really wonderful things happen to me. But they're largely like work-based. They're things that I've had to plan and put myself in particular spaces, and even then, it's very much been a struggle. So when I encountered this luck circle, it shifted my thinking around a lot of this. So so I can dive into that as well. But yes, how do we want to do? Should I just kind of dive into things and then see what kind of time we have? We may, if we have time. I'm not here to give a lecture necessarily, so we may actually have time to break up into a couple of small groups if anybody wants to participate and give it a shot. But yeah, shall I just dive in then?
Yeah, well, do talk about it a little bit first.
Yeah, well, yes, yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, diving into the description of the what the luck circle actually is and where it came from. So I have my notes here as you see me kind of looking to the side. It's so the luck circle is based on a sociological study that was done not particularly long ago, from what I understand, but it was developed. Sorry, just looking at your chat comment here. Don't miss anything. Yeah, yeah, I've seen that a lot for sure. The that idea that like I'm not I'm not deserving of things and therefore they're not coming to me. And that, of course, from a magical perspective, we think of manifestation and casting spells and things. And as soon as that doubt comes in, it blocks that energy. So with the luck circle, the study that was done is basically it was a look at lucky people or people who just seemed to have everything go right for them. And what they were looking for was sort of common denominators between those people. And what these researchers noticed, and I think it's actually it's a mix of a few studies that were done, but basically, excuse me, what they found with these lucky people is the common denominator was the kinds of relationships they had and how they asked for things and to whom and how they talked about their needs and their wants. So so basically what it boiled down to was the lucky people tended to not just stick with their own circle. They had sort of a almost like concentric rings in a way, where when instead of just sticking with friends and family when they were asking for their needs to be met or things that they were looking for, they had a tendency to talk to people one step outside of their norm and potentially two steps outside of their norm. Now, if you get too far, you kind of lose that thread of people wanting to help or people being willing to help and offer things. But within that one circle of, I know this person who knows this person that can do this thing, there tended to be a very, there tended to be a higher rate of people connecting with the things that they needed or wanted or were asking for. The other very important key was the specificity with which they asked for things. So it wasn't just like, I need more money or I need, I want to go on vacation somewhere. It was, I need this amount of money to come in and I have these things that this skill that I can offer, and I have this time frame for this thing to happen. And then that specificity allowed for that outer circle, so to speak, of connection to really jump in and say, oh, that's something that I'm looking for, or I have this resource that that I'll connect you with. And so so really it's a fairly simple thing overall. But I shared when I did this or tried this with the EarthSpirit community, which as a thought, the EarthSpirit community seems to be really the perfect shape of community for something like this, because everyone is one step outside of your normal circle. So you're coming into a space where you may have known people for a long time or have a shared experience, but you live in different places. You are not necessarily related to everyone. You don't see these people all the time, but you do have a vested interest in caring for the community. I feel like that kind of goes as well with really any spiritual group or shared interest community of any kind. Um, so, um, so the stories that I gave as examples when I was teaching this or doing this um, event at a Feast of Lights, one that was given to us at the art retreat was somebody who came to their Lux Circle, and they said, my art project is going well. I don't really need any resources for that at the moment, but honestly, I would really love to take my mother for her birthday to Italy because she's always wanted to go and I want her to have that opportunity. And somebody in their small group just happened to be a first generation immigrant whose mother still lived in Italy, who had a large villa type home that she loved to host people in for free. And so it just happened that because this person was asking for that very specific desire, it was very lucky. Lucky to me beyond what these normal resources would be, but simply asking for that specific need allowed for that connection to happen. And sure enough, they were able to go and have that vacation. So that was one that I didn't personally see. They're not always that spectacular, certainly. But one that I did personally see was after my fellowship was over, I joined in an online Lux Circle that was hosted by the National Art Strategies, which is the group that runs the fellowship. And it was just a few of us, maybe 6 total, on this online event. And somebody from my cohort was putting out there, she didn't come in with any specifics. So she was just kind of throwing things out there, things that she would like to do, like to see. And one of them was she wanted to travel more and do some of her artwork in Africa or Europe, places places that she was thinking about. And she just threw out there, I've also always wanted to go to Antarctica. And somebody in the circle of those 6 people had seen he works at a university, and he had seen posted on a board the day before an artist residency that took people to Antarctica to do work. And so like that one was crazy to me, because how many artist residencies, like how many people period are going to Antarctica? So so to have that person see that post the day before and be present for this ask, whether or not it went through, she would have still had to apply, but she wouldn't have known about it. So it just seems to me like it's a really great way to step into that river of energy and to allow for things to manifest by being specific about the needs and opening to possibilities. Before I kind of pause in my thoughts, there's one other thing that has been really more for me on the spiritual side that sort of comes out of this is I've noticed in seeing a couple of these events happen, I've noticed that this is a great way to understand the resources that you have for yourself and gifts to offer others. That wasn't necessarily highlighted in in any of the writing about it or the study itself, but it was really interesting to me because I come into the situation thinking, oh, I don't know that many art people, so I'm not going to be able to connect somebody in this place or that place. And I'm really far from this person who lives over here. And the number of times I was able to say, I actually know somebody who I can connect you with, or I live really close to there and I can probably help you with this thing. Um, it was it was really empowering to me, and it seemed to everyone in the groups, even those who weren't coming to it from a spiritual aspect. They People seemed really excited in those moments to say, I actually have these things that I can help you with, and making those connections really seemed to be a great way to deepen the weaving of the communities. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions or any thoughts.
Well, I have a thought here as you were talking about luck. It struck me that it sounded an awful lot like just manifestation. And I thought about it and I said, well, one of the things that I think isn't mentioned in most discussions of manifestation is the idea of being careful to make sure it's a balanced energy exchange. And you are saying the luck really requires that for, yes, very specific. More specific is better. But then to say, I have this to offer, or I don't know who needs what, but I'm willing to offer equivalent energy. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I think that's actually a really great way to look at it. I hadn't considered that before, but it is an interesting way to think about it, because even if you go into the situation and in your small group you don't have anything that anyone needs at that moment, coming with that willingness to share the energy and be present and listen and hold that space, I think that does wonders. But it also opens to future possibilities, because I think one of the things that I saw at particularly at Feast of Lights when this was happening, and I was a timekeeper, so 5 groups of 5. I could hear little snippets of conversations that were going on, just to kind of to feel into how everyone was doing, and there was a really great sense of support and wanting to there were, for instance, there were sort of emotional things coming up and saying, I have this thing going on in my life that I would really love to find a practical solution for, but also something to handle the emotional situation going on that's attached to it. And to hear the way that everyone in the group was willing to brainstorm and to share that energy, even if they didn't have anything specific that they could offer, sort of as that reciprocal energy, it really does have that sense of like, I'm giving of myself and asking at the same time. And there are times when people come to it just to come to it. It's they're not necessarily asking for anything, so it's almost that
right.
like.
But as somebody once said, 80% of life is showing up.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And if you show up, with good intent, you project a positive energy into the situation that even if you got squat to really hand anybody or do for them, you still help keep things on track. So
I think that really is a fantastic thing, and thank you for pointing that out, because from the magical perspective as well, I think that's
oh yes,
that's a fantastic manifestation, but also that self-sacrifice, but as a gift, not a
willingness to give.
Yes.
A willingness to give if asked. Always be there. So, and I try to do that. I very frequently, since I come late to the concept of magic, and when I say late, I'm talking on the order, I'm almost 73 now, and how long, Jan, how long have we been doing this? The Otherworldly? You've done
Me
it
or
long.
me?
Well, how long have I been? I've sort of lost track already, but it's not a long
How
time.
long have we been going to attending Otherworldly?
Okay.
How long have we been? How long ago did we work at the Heart Song, at the New Age shop?
Heart Song was 1995.
Yeah, well,
But I'm thinking here, not because here, being in the company of day-to-day practitioners with serious insights
mhm.
has opened up a lot for me, which I'm very grateful for. And it's awkward for me because the way my brain is wired, the logical, literal side has a bad dial-up connection to the other side of me. So, Jen goes and talks to her gods. I don't get to do it. They have to send down a raven to perch on a power line and yell at me to get a message, which
Or to
actually
talk to me,
happened.
to talk to him.
Yeah. So the idea that I can come in here magically challenged and have the company of people who all are supporting me. So, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking, as before we go much further on this, how many of the people here would be interested in trying the luck circle exercise?
Mhm. Go ahead and raise your hands or
So we have these
speak up
little things you can reactions, and you can
or
put
comment.
a raise hand up there like that if you and it appears if you want to try it, because if we only half of us want to try it, it'd be kind of okay, let's talk about something else. And so you'd be in the bar at the bottom under reactions. It's where you
Yes. Some of the newer versions actually will recognize a hand raise.
yeah. But got a few of them anyway.
Yeah.
The other thing I can offer is that if tonight doesn't seem if there's not enough interest tonight, I would be happy to kind of hold that as a separate event as well, and continue the discussion tonight with something else. It may be based on the timing we have, it may actually be a little tricky. The shape of the luck circle itself is in your smaller groups, each person has approximately 7 minutes. 7 minutes seems to be a good time frame for it, where you have enough time to introduce yourself and make your ask, and then there's enough time to get initial feedback, but then there's also time to dig in a little bit more. So I think it may be better to hold off tonight anyway, but then to hold a specific either another evening like this or something.
So if we have the parameters put out, we can perhaps put a little write up under YouTube, and then we'd say, okay, we're going to bring him back in a couple months, and
Mhm.
then people want to
I'm wondering,
play that game can try it. But
I'm wondering if you could describe how it works then, because it's sounding a little like speed dating.
In a way,
yes, it does.
Yes, speed dating with luck. So basically, what you do is
magic.
Yes. So, yes. So the way that I did it at Feast of Lights, which was ever so slightly more in depth than when I experienced it with the art group, I guided a meditation, sort of a mini ritual to open to the flow of that energy and to really open to what you have to offer, and to connect in with the community of people that you're with in the space. From there, depending on how many people there are, we can either do it as a full group or break into smaller groups based on the number of people and timing. And then in the small group, each person gets those 7 minutes, and that's time. So each person gets the 7 minutes to speak their ask to the group. And in those 7 minutes, you speak your ask, introduce yourself, speak your ask, and then the group doesn't give any feedback during the ask, and then when the person is finished, the group is then open to start to give feedback and give suggestions and things along those lines. And then the one, really the one thing to do during that is to make those connections with the people who may have something to offer you. So having something to write on, or if you have in the breakout rooms, if you have a chat open that you can save, where somebody's kind of taking notes, or each person can take notes for themselves and then save that. It's basically to start those conversations, get the initial suggestions, and make the connection to follow up with after the luck circle. Does that sort of make sense? Sound good?
It
Yeah,
does.
it
It makes
makes
sense.
complete sense.
I've still got my notes.
And therefore, I can walk into this knowing what is expected, knowing what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Which
Yeah.
I'm not entirely certain that we all did at Feast of Lights.
This is very fair. There was also a bit of a timing issue, because it was partially planning on my part, and then also not realizing that the final, the closing circle there was no buffer between my workshop and the closing circle, and it was in the same space. So we were flooded before the last person was able to go, which I felt so bad about, and did my best to try and connect with people afterwards, and it was tricky. So so I think having these spaces online, it's really wonderful to do in person, and as we all know, being in person for them is any event has a different kind of energy. But I've really actually loved doing this online, because with the way that Zoom is set up, where you have somebody featured for those 7 minutes, and then you can put things in the chat as things come up, and you can refer back, as opposed to maybe interrupting or kind of jumping in like you would in person. There's a little bit more of a chat.
You can be in touch with people that you have never met before, that are from 3,000 miles away. So
exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to, since we didn't get a sudden outpouring of, I want to try this tonight, I'm going to arbitrarily make the decision that we're going to ask you back in April, and we'll put something up to describe it, so people, and then we'll try and get it there. So we can talk about other things, since we still have a half an hour. I do want to ask you more about art, and because I know several of the people who are here also are involved in both art and magic, and manifesting things with art is a something that I'm very interested in. But I want to share the there's a story on specificity. A friend of mine, manifestation, like you got to picture it, you got to really want it, you have to be very, very specific. And a friend of mine who does magic he just like, there is no problem that I'm having in my life right now that couldn't be solved with an influx of money. So he pictured himself with money in his hand, with bills in his hands, with lots of coin piles of money around, surrounded by money. And he was offered a job at a at a local charity to sit in the vault and count the donations that were mailed in. to which of course he was like, no, I knew better than that. He forgot to specify my money.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's an incredibly frustrating situation, but I love when that happens, because to me, there's so much magical proof right there. You have that image, you know what you want, you can see it, and
you still spell it wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. And his reaction was like, I know better.
Yeah, my example is
the woman who cast the love spell, and she had done it before and it had gone wrong. So she was really specific this time. She'd just come out of a relationship with a really moody guy. She said, I want him to be upbeat and happy, totally love with me. She remembered to say male, which sometimes doesn't always happen. She's like, and as long as I'm going for it, I'd love to be a redhead. And the next week, somebody gave her an Irish setter.
I was trying to remember that story, and I loved it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just on random luck, she got a mammal at least, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
But didn't think to say human. But on the other hand, it might have been exactly what she needed. If she needed somebody
that's
to just
true.
love her and be there for her and share her life with her, it might have been exactly what she needed.
Hey, the Rolling
She didn't
Stones
know
said it. You can't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, Chris, I'm going to take a left turn here with an idea that I've been chewing on in the background while we've been talking about luck, and the way you present it as a balanced exchange. And I remember a presentation of the concept of luck in one of Larry Niven's Ringworld books.
Mm.
I don't know.
Okay.
You read any of those?
I'm a
Chip
chronically
O'Connor-
slow reader, but
Well, the thing I'm thinking of here is Tila Brown. And she was the end product of decades of manipulation of the human population by the puppeteers. And they created this thing. Everybody could have as many children as all of their medical screening said would be reasonable. They also had the birthright lottery. And Tila was the offspring of a couple generations of winners.
Mm.
The
Now,
7
what?
generations.
Seventh generation winners.
Yep, 7 generations. I remember that. That was so cool.
And yeah, and one of the things that came out is, first of all, when she was first introduced to the readers at a party, she was this awkward, ungainly girl because she was so lucky she never fell down, never had to learn how to walk gracefully. And it also hammered home what's lucky for one person may not be lucky for anyone else. And, her luck held up, but God help all the people who were on the ring world with her. And it was really interesting. But again, I suspect that skewing the genetics like that, and it does raise the question, is there a genetic component to it? And it may not be directly luck, actually, because I thought about it. And I mean, one of the things I struggle with is the fact that genetically, as I say, the logical side of my brain barely speaks to the emotional, intuitive side. At least, I can't get real conversations going on. And if you get messages from above, that's where they come in. And the closest thing I've gotten to a direct message is that Raven. And as I said to the group when it happened, I said, I felt like I had just somebody had just delivered a howler.
Yeah.
So, I wonder what you thought of that idea. First of all, what's lucky for you? And I think a lot of intent has to happen there, because basically this was all done behind the scenes by the puppeteers. Nobody knew this was even going on. And therefore, Tila herself, and why I forget why the puppeteer said they wanted to breed lucky humans, but they did, and they got, be careful what you ask for. But as I say, the band was lousy dial-up connection.
I kind of wonder, because I know that the within the Norse, the heathen tradition, the concept of luck being an external force that your family can have, it can be passed down through the family, it can be taken, it can be stolen, it can be rubbed off on people.
It's almost like a
interesting
possession.
concept.
Well, as Bill was talking, I came up with this phrase in my head of a person who sucked all the luck out of her room.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a really interesting thing. You know, a
Oh,
lot
that's
of
true.
the conversation that's coming up around, you know, generational trauma, generational things that are coming through, and I think, um, energetically speaking, karmically speaking, magically speaking, all of those things being, you know, different focuses of the energy, but um, you know, it seems to me like a lot of what we do, or a lot of what we see with lucky people versus unlucky people, you know, chronically poor families, um, it's it
Mm,
looks like there's bad luck involved, and there's really not. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of it's a lot of external factors that go into maybe keeping someone unlucky.
right.
Um,
Conditioning.
Yes, yeah, and it very much conditioning. You know, I'm working with it myself because a lot of my family has been
Mhm.
in poverty for a long time, and
Right.
you know, we survive, we keep things comfortable. We're never hungry, you know, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. But there feels like there's that glass ceiling there, and I realize there's not. There's really not. And for me to be a witch, my family are not necessarily magical, though there's a lot of spiritual energy there as well. But for me to come through and be the witch that has that you know, that drive to move forward, um, I'm still living less than paycheck to paycheck right now. But you know, I try to keep that, especially, you know, learning about the luck circle. I personally am trying to keep open to this idea of having a vision, being very clear about the vision, developing it, and then talking to people. Um,
Mhm.
and that's you know, relying on community.
Hmm.
Back at the winter solstice, I started a few years ago, started a practice of doing a rune reading for myself. And this year in particular, one of the things that came up was sort of a description. Um, uh, there were 10 runes total that sort of came up over the course of a ritual that I've given myself. That's sort of an open-ended, uh, I call it, well, I call it the long night ritual, and I would love to come on and talk about that at some point because it's an open-ended,
Yeah.
it starts on the winter solstice and then just goes until it's done. And so this year, the runes decided they wanted to stay out on my altar and have me pick one whenever they were ready for me to pick one. And one of the things that really came up was this idea of luck being or the luck that I was seeking being on one side, allowing for things to happen and allowing for the possession of this energy to come through. And on the other side, manas being community,
Mm.
and very clear, like the luck or fate in the middle, and then letting go, but also being open to that, the connection in the community.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I think there's something really to be said about that. That generational luck being both energetic and also
Mhm.
external factors.
Yeah.
But the other thing that you called up there about the one person's luck being potentially bad luck for others, and I
Mm.
think there's something so magical in that conversation because years ago I remember hearing an idea about, you know, if you're casting a spell to get a job, for instance, and you have people who are not going to get the job because you did.
Mhm.
Well, it was interesting to me because there was a discussion around that, and um, it was sort of pointed out that there are going to be people who have different skills. You know, somebody is going to be really good at math. I am not that person. I'm very much not that person. And so this idea that for those of us that have magical skill, it's like a skill set that anyone is going to bring to a situation. And so when we use that skill, it's not necessarily a sense of getting ahead. Um, and it's you know, this the sense of if we're doing magic to better our own, to better our own situation, are we harming others by not giving them that opportunity? And I'm sure there are absolutely multiple schools of thought along those lines. But the one that was really interesting to me in that moment was this idea that magic is a skill, and the use and manipulation of that energy is a skill, and the other people who are applying for the same job or looking for the same benefit to their lives are not going to have that skill, but they're going to have others that they lean on in order to get ahead. So that was an interesting concept that I hadn't considered until I heard that conversation.
Yeah, because I keep wondering about, are there ways to resolve this potential downside to luck? And I like your example of going for a job. Well, if you were the best qualified candidate and you got the job, then you really haven't hurt other people, because they all knew it was a competition. They just didn't bring their A game and you did. So they have to go off and try again. They'll find something, and you may go for a job and get run over by somebody better too. So
absolutely.
What it occurs to me to think of is, if you're casting magic to benefit your life, perhaps you should be thinking about the potential consequences to others and including that in the magic.
Give it context.
And it hurt no other.
Well, right.
Mm-hmm.
And ye harm none, do as thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, though, with that, there's definitely sort of a gray area within what is harm, because I often use when I talk to students and clients who are looking to learn about spell work specifically, I give a couple of examples where one in particular where I had a boyfriend in college who we weren't going to see each other for the summer, and of course, young love, like, oh, we can't handle 3 months apart, we can't do this, and all of that. So so he was looking at summer jobs, and he found one at the MFA in Boston, the Museum of Fine Arts. And I said, well, if you want to live with me for the summer, we can, you can apply for this job and see what happens. But I'm also willing to do a spell for you if that's something that we really want. And I did. He got the interview the next day, and sure enough, got the job. And he currently now works for museums in New York, creating educational programs, which great. He had that, it worked out very well for him, but the two of us living together caused us to break up. And so,
but you got the opportunity to find out.
Right, exactly. And when I, for the longest time, I was afraid to cast spells for things that I wanted because of that situation. And now that it's been 11 plus years since that happened, and I look back and I say, well, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have met my husband. It's that kind of situation. And
one
so
door closes, another door opens.
Exactly. And so I think, when we're talking about casting spells with the intention to not harm others, of course, there's that sense of if someone needs this in a way that I don't, or something along those lines, potentially leaving that open, but also the idea that your spell, or anything that we're trying to do to manifest, that luck, so to speak, kind of bring it full circle here, anything to manifest that luck is also potentially putting them on the path that they need to get to where they're going. So so there are a few ways to look at that.
Yeah, I like the of course, I'm going, Chipicon's going for musical reference again. May God bless and keep the Tsar far away from us. It's like,
Oh,
yeah,
dear Lord.
it's a blessing,
Yes.
but it's a very focused blessing that
Well, that goes along with mine. Oh, dear Lord, I pray that thou wilt preserve me from thy most devoted followers.
Yes.
but yeah, we're you can, the whole idea of there's a lot of people who figure that blessing is that blessing is good and hexing is bad, and going for something for yourself must be taking something. You're looking at a zero sum universe, and it isn't. The more good we do for each other, we do for ourselves, it comes back on you, and blessing everything around you. I bless the people that I really disapprove of because they desperately need it, and I bless the people that I approve of because they're so good. I want them to have more good. So it's the Huna way of looking at things, and I really like that. You just bless everything, And
I keep hearing my mother in her accent saying, "Bless his heart."
okay, well, that's a Southern way of looking at things.
Mhm.
Very
On for
powerful
yes.
one, that's for sure.
Bless your pointed little head. As my
That one I never heard of.
well, that's what my grandmother used to say. But
Mhm.
but yeah, we can bless. How to do magic? It's kind of a thing that I really see it as it's like there's physics and there's rules for it, and then there's
Yeah.
metaphysics, and metaphysics has just as many rules and just as much logic, and it's just as much a skill, but it's also like an art, like you have a certain amount of talent you can use, but it's practice that gets you to Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
And the common factor in metaphysics and art and physics is you have a desired end result and you decide to get there.
Mm,
You find a way to get there.
mhm.
And I asked
Whether it's wishing that you had this or that, or
Yeah.
putting together the items in physics that make the reaction happen, or making the painting that you want.
And it's interesting because Feather Stitch really sometimes has a hard time explaining how she got where she goes. Says, I don't know. I started out with an image of what I wanted, then I manipulated reality until it was there. And the transmogrifier. And I have to admit, that's the best description anyone's ever come up with.
So what other rules do you when you're teaching people magic, Chris, what rules do you go by?
Oh, it's a really interesting to bring up, particularly now, because I found myself in the last couple of months sort of serendipitously acting as a professional magical consultant for people who were looking to learn sort of in an in-depth way how to use magic, basically, or how to relate to magic. And my business, the work that I do, which as it says in the bio, is artist, performer, healer. And so I do massage therapy and energy healing. I am a choreographer and a dancer and an artist as well. So as Chipicon said, yes, I can't say no to anything, and therefore it's quite the umbrella company that I'm currently in the process of making. And now one of the new things that seems to be popping up is this magical consulting, for lack of a better term, or maybe that's the best term. It's perfect, I think.
I think it's perfectly reasonable. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I listen to you naming these 47 different things, and I think about the idea that and I'm no different. I mean, if you look at my resume, you wonder how many people did they combine to do this? And I was thinking about this the other day because you talk about doing the work you love. Now, is any one of these things the work you love, or is this mangled conglomeration the work you love?
Yes.
And in most cases, it's unique because
Mhm.
I read a kind of interesting, one of my many articles I read 2 days ago. They were quoting Steve Jobs, who gave a talk. I forget if he was a keynote speaker or just whatever it was, the event was, but he had just been diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. And the quote was, do what you love. Your time is limited. Don't waste it living someone else's life.
Mm. Mhm.
That was kind of a zinger,
Yeah.
because, all right, whose life am I living?
Mhm.
And an awful lot of us actually stumble through life living someone else's life, or at least living
Yeah,
their expectation of what your life should be.
Mm.
absolutely. But I think that actually it's a really good spot to answer Chipakon's question as well. The rules that I kind of give to people when I'm in that position of teaching. Um, my goal when I'm working with someone like that is to help them discover their particular magic. And so the things that kind of come out are, they're the basic things like, end it harm none, so on and so forth. But also, um, I had a client the other day who is she's a Reiki practitioner and a massage therapist and is really good at manifestation, but she wanted something more, and she had been digging into paganism sort of in various ways. And so she asked me if I would work with her in that way. And so we spent a couple of hours together. And the things that came out of it were really, I was in her apartment and I took her around to kind of look at the way that she had set up the space and the things that she had, the things that she clearly put value on. And we talked a lot about the nature of the things that she was valuing. So she has over the last couple of years since I've known her, she's gotten into breeding small fish and fish tanks and caring for them. And so we talked about what the nature of that work is for her. It's about bringing life into the space. And she said she really loves cleaning the tanks. And she said most people find that really annoying, but this work of giving back and maintaining this life in this space. And I said, right there, you have spells. Like you have the potential to do spells with those things. And so basically the rule that I would put on it, I guess, is when I go into working with somebody, and my tagline is I help people find their magic. It's a figurative thing because when you take it to massage or you take it to a dance class or something like that, it's like, oh, find the magic. But when I dig deeper and find somebody who's really interested in learning magical practice, it has that, like, I'm going in and finding those moments of magic that exist already and helping them to sort of develop that as well. A bit of a roundabout answer, Chippercon, but does that sort of answer a little bit?
Is there a link you have to if anybody wants to,
Yes.
give you money and have you help them find their magic?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Is it-
will put it in the chat right now.
Okay, you're putting that in the chat because my immediate thought was when my husband was teaching people in the SCA how to fight, he would help them find their stance and their technique and how they should fight. And I know in an awful lot of fight practices, they teach you this blow, that blow, this, okay, you strike here, you strike there, this is how it's done. And it's like, and that's not the way my husband did it. And I found with art, especially, and I suppose art's magical, people
yes.
do them different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you're Your system sounds brilliant to me.
Thank you. That means a lot. That really means a lot coming from you. Thank you
But
for that.
well, it totally it sounds so much more useful in my opinion than
Well,
okay,
yeah,
here's my book of shadows, everybody can use it the same way. No, that
no.
everybody is going to have a different talent. You know, as an artist, you know, just because you knit doesn't mean you can crochet. Just because you draw
Right.
doesn't mean you sculpt. Just
Mhm.
because you play the violin doesn't mean you can play the piano.
Mhm.
Some of it carries over,
Yes.
but not all of it.
I
And
think, you know, I was saying to the client to kind of give her some background, particularly about my training. You know, I've been practicing for about 24 years now. I started when I was 7, and my parents are not magical. They were very supportive of my journey, um, in terms of discovering and feeling into things. Um, but you know, I know some fantastic people who are, um, you know, very clear in a particular tradition, or you know, they had teachers who they learned from that handed down things. And the things that I love to see are that balance between taking that tradition and making it your own, taking that tradition and passing it on to see what your students make of it. And then from my end, um, I never had any of that. I may have wanted it, but didn't know where to look for it. And I think I wouldn't have developed the way that I did had I had a teacher who, you know, who would have given me A, B, and C, and then told me to do A, B, and C for homework. Um, and both are extremely valid, I think. But one of the great things I think, coming from my practice and my perspective, is that um, I made the mistakes. Like, I didn't have somebody kind of keeping me from falling off the edge of a cliff. I fell off a couple of times. Granted, only rolled down a little bit, and you know, fall like plummet to the river below or something. But I did have to kind of go the trial and error route, and I think because of that, I learned things from people like, well, case in point, Chipicon, being in Forest Cat Clan a couple of years ago, where I came in with a knowledge of using the runes for spells, but to have, you know, to have the time, that concentrated time for that weekend of
Mhm.
doing practical magic together, doing healing spells together, um, that was a formative experience for me. And I have several of those particular formative experiences. And so I know that anyone who I work with in that way is going to have formative experiences like those that I just want to pull out and sort of pull them out and then hand them back and say, look at what you just described. So so that's really where I come from with things like that.
Mm. Of course, when you know, one of the things that occurs to me is in a lot of different contexts, whether I was working as a home health aide or I have a chance to speak or teach or whatever, is this overriding sense of responsibility, which stems from an incident in 1969 when I was active in the Lutheran Church. And during the summer, when they did what they called a folk mass, which was an informal set of same thing with a guitar instead of a pipe organ. Well, the minister came up and asked me to be the officiant, which blew my mind completely. Well, and I remember one moment halfway through my sermon, I glanced out at the congregation. We had a full house. And suddenly I thought to myself, there are 300 people sitting there listening to every word I say, and it scared the crap out of me. And I've had to try to be so careful since then. Have you had that experience?
I have.
Okay, good. I feel better now.
Mhm. It wasn't with that many people, but the context was different, but I think no less charged for various reasons.
Okay.
Where I had I was sort of thrown into a situation that I thought I wanted at the time, and it didn't go as planned over the course of about a year and a half. But I found myself at the age of 23, 24 in a priesthood position, and acting as a witch, acting as a spiritual guide. And looking back on that time, it was really tumultuous. There were people who were asking for things that I could give in many ways, and in others probably shouldn't have been at the time. But I learned a lot from it, and I think there is that sense of responsibility for sure. Just looking at the time, I'm not in a rush certainly, but want to respect time limits if folks have.
Well, as long as it stays interesting. Well, it's when
It's up to Chipicon, really. So.
Yeah, when she's ready to give up, I just hit the snooze button on my 9 o'clock alarm.
I took my 9 o'clock pills.
Right, and I'm supposed to take mine, but I said, all right, give it 15 minutes.
It's about that time, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little after, but this is one of these things. It's like we get started, and it's like a puppy with a shoe. We just go nuts. And if somebody didn't cut us off, we'd probably still be here at 6 in the morning. But anyway, Chris, that was excellent. I like you said a lot of good stuff to hear. You raised some interesting questions for me.
I am looking forward to the luck circle.
Yeah, be better prepared. And for me, it was a matter of it's a very personal, inner kind of thing.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna say thank you, Chris, and end the recording. And says thanks everybody, and do come back in April.